Ready to start. So this is the City Council. City Council as the shareholder of City of St. Catharines Hydro Inc. special meeting of the shareholder. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Good evening and welcome to the special meeting of council as the shareholder of the City of St. Catharines Hydro Inc. for Monday, March 8th, 2021. The first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Moved by Councillor Sorrento, seconded by Councillor Garcia. Be it resolved that the agenda from March 8th, 2021 special meeting of the shareholder be approved. Can I have a show of hands? It's okay to put up your hand, Townsend. There you go. And that's carried. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing and hearing none. The item number 4 is the in-camera session. I'm going to look to the deputy clerk to read the reason for going in camera.
So City Council as shareholder for St. Catharines Hydro Inc. will meet in camera for the following purpose. Correspondence received from a principal to the Electra shareholder agreement in camera pursuant to the Municipal Act section 239 2F advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And by attending the in-camera session, each member of council acknowledges that their obligations under the Code of Conduct, including responsibilities related to confidentiality of closed session materials and discussion, remain the same as if they were physically present at the meeting. This includes that members of council are not permitted to record the proceedings and that they must ensure that no other person can see or hear any of the confidential deliberations taking place.
Perfect. Can I have a motion to move in camera? Is Councillor Garcia or Kushner on the call? He is. Councillor Garcia will move it, seconded by Councillor Williamson. Can I have a show of hands, please? Everybody in favor to move in camera? And that's moved.
All right, I will move you in camera. One moment, please.
Thank you.
Hi, Councillor Miller. One moment, please.
Sure, thanks.
Are we all back?
I believe we have everybody rejoining.
Okay, motion arising from in camera. We have a motion. Would anybody like to do that motion?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner, seconded by Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Okay. And I guess I'll ask for a recorded vote. Look to the deputy clerk.
Councillor Kushner,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
Councillor Harris,
Yes.
Councillor Littleton,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Porter,
Yes.
Councillor Cisco,
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento,
Yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
Mayor Sendzik,
Yes.
and that's carried.
Adjournment. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting, but before doing so, I would like to remind councillors to remain on this Zoom call for the upcoming council meeting that starts at 6 p.m. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Phillips. All those in favor? And that's carried. So stay on the line.
It's 6 o'clock, Mr. Mayor. He's there. Are you in the room, Mr. Mayor?
You calling me city clerk?
Yes, we're ready to start.
Look at Deputy
Thank
Mayor Townsend was getting worried there. You tell, are we live already or what?
We're live.
Good. Oops. Okay, let me get stuff going. All right, good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of council for Monday, March 8th, 2021. This is International Women's Day, and we will start with the singing of O Canada.
One moment, it's there. Okay, let's try again. One moment, please, having technical difficulties.
And here we go.
Yes, I believe so.
If not,
If not,
it's my voice you're going to hear. Not going to be nice because it'll be out of tune.
Rebecca, are you ready? It's on. No, it's not on the screen.
Sorry.
We're having technical difficulties, so perhaps we should just move on.
All right. Does anyone want to partake in O Canada with the mayor? I'm looking to the deputy mayor to join me.
Deputy Mayor will assist. Yes.
All right. Ready to go?
Here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the
Il s'est porté la toi.
from far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our lands glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we
stand on guard for thee.
That is great. All right, Deputy Mayor.
Well done. Well done.
So sorry. Well, I didn't want to, make it uneventful.
All right, Deputy Mayor, Deputy Mayor Townsend. That's one for the books. All right, we begin this gathering by acknowledging the land in which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Dish with One Upper Canada treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of our Indigenous friends. Okay, so today is International Women's Day, a time to celebrate social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women, not just here in our community, but around the world. The day also marks a call to action, accelerating gender parity. This year's theme for International Women's Day is Choose to Change. We can all choose to challenge, or choose to challenge, sorry. We can all choose to challenge and call out gender bias and equality. We can choose to seek out and celebrate women's achievements. Here at the City of St. Catharines, our CAO, Shelley Kemnitz, and myself signed the Leadership Accord on Diversity with Electra in 2019 on behalf of Council, committing to supporting women in the workplace. It builds on our foundational efforts to promote the values of diversity, equality, and inclusivity. Last week, the city launched a video celebrating our efforts to promote gender diversity and inclusion. You can check it out on the city's YouTube page. Last week, we also had an opportunity to participate in the GNCC's virtual International Women's Day event. And congratulations to Dr. Robin Williams, who received the IWD Award for her contributions as a pediatrician and a public health physician, and her work in female leadership, supporting, encouraging, and advising and listening. Consider how you can get engaged and make a difference, and collectively, each one of us can help create an inclusive, gender equal world. And I would just like to say personally, our CAO, Shelley Kemnitz, who has been an outstanding leader throughout this pandemic, to our city councilors, Councillor Littleton, Councillor Porter, and Councillor Dodge. And if you look at our senior team, we have so many strong women that surround us every time we meet as a council, and every time we're working on city-based issues, we have strong women that are leading us. So I think that's it's something that we should acknowledge, not just on International Women's Day, but throughout the year as well. So I just want to start with that wonderful opening. And then we talk about this week as being an anniversary of sorts, as this is the week in which a year ago, COVID-19 showed up here in Niagara. And we want to acknowledge and recognize those who have lost their lives as a result of the pandemic. At present, 369 residents in our community have died due to COVID-19, leaving a lasting impact on their families, friends, and caregivers. We also want to acknowledge the impact COVID-19 has had on the collective mental health of our community. The pandemic has also profoundly affected our economy, with many losing their jobs and some businesses being forced to close forever. Flags will be lowered at the City of St. Catharines, as well as the region and the other area municipalities this upcoming weekend to acknowledge the anniversary of COVID-19 here in Niagara. Last week, the Niagara region announced locations for the COVID-19 mass vaccination clinics. The region announced Brock University as a site for St. Catharines and Thorold. Since that announcement, I've heard very many concerns from constituents here in our community. And I want to be clear that the city wasn't involved in the consultation of the location. And that is a decision that was made by public health, but the concerns that are being raised about the accessibility of Brock University, about seniors and the abilities to get to Brock University, all of those are being sent to public health, so that if you are, as counselors, receiving those as well, you can forward them to the mayor's office, and we will continue to put them up to public health just so that they can see the concerns in our community. We are seeing success with Niagara Health at the Seymour Hanna complex, which has done an outstanding job in working with the city to create a space for the vaccination of our healthcare workers and other people who are working with people at risk in our community. Once the vaccine supply is available, the first group to get vaccinated will be those who are 80 years of age and older, as well as Indigenous adults. As Niagara will be using the provincial booking system, residents will be able to book appointments online or by phone starting March 15th. That's what we've been told. While not yet available, the clinic schedules will be publicized throughout all forms of media, including newspaper, radio, social media, municipal websites, and through community groups. Niagara Region Public Health will then follow the provincial prioritization, going from 80 and above, then 75 to 80, 70 to 75, and working through the areas of prioritization. Essential workers will also be getting the vaccination, and that'll be coming up shortly as well. The clinics will be offered in addition to local pharmacies and family doctors who may be also provided the vaccine once more supply is ready. More than 28,000 vaccines have been administered in Niagara so far. So I just want to say thank you again to Niagara Health and Public Health for all the work that they're doing, including all long-term care residents. And in fact, we haven't had a death in our community since February 23rd. So it's showing that all of our efforts to contain the virus, everything that we've been asked to do, in addition to the vaccines and the approaches that they've been taking at long-term care, are actually having a positive impact here in our community. And I just want to continue to say, we're going to be advocating for our fair share of vaccines to the provincial government, making sure that we get our fair share here in Niagara. In the meantime, remain vigilant, wear your face mask, physical distancing, maintain proper hand wash and hygiene. And it's going to take a bit more time, but when the pace does pick up, I believe it's going to pick up quickly. And as we saw from General Rick Hillier, retired General Rick Hillier last week, they're projecting that all adults in Ontario will have a jab in the arm by June 20th. And so that's the target that we're hearing from the province. Looking forward to that, as a lot of people in our community are really looking forward to it. Last week, the city received some positive news from the province with the news of additional funding to help municipalities deal with the financial impact of COVID-19. St. Catharines will receive $2.9 million, and you hear more about that in the CAO's report coming up. And so I just want to say thank you to the province, as this funding goes beyond the previously announced Safe Restart funding that both the provincial and federal governments have provided to municipalities. The province also announced additional funding to support transit systems dealing with the financial impact. St. Catharines Transit is expected to receive $3.7 million as part of the provincial allocation. So again, these are much needed funds at a very critical time for our municipality. I want to thank Minister Mulroney and the provincial government for their support, especially when it comes to transit and transit across Ontario. Coming up, we also have a very popular day that happens across most university towns in Canada, and it's St. Patrick's Day. We are preparing to mark St. Patrick's Day. As we prepare to mark St. Patrick's Day, it's a reminder to all residents that we're not to gather in any large numbers. You got to maintain your household. It's not a time to have parties. And we've given up so much. This is not the time that we find our way back to celebrating. So we want to be able to work with Brock University and Niagara Regional Police and City of Thorold. So if there's any students who are thinking about having some kind of party to mark St. Patrick's Day, there will be a zero tolerance approach. So expect to be fines handed out if there's any parties that will be happening in our community. We want to make sure we just get through this last stage of where we are with COVID-19. March 10th is Harriet Tubman Day. We'll be raising a virtual flag with our anti-racism committee. And the flag will be paying tribute to her commitment and extraordinary courage while leading hundreds of slaves from freedom, of which this was one of her headquarters here in St. Catharines. She played such an important role here in St. Catharines. And I want to say thank you to Rochelle Bush for her continued leadership to share the legacy of Harriet Tubman through the ongoing work of the BME Church. A couple of quick points. If you like beaches, if you like our beaches in St. Catharines, check out the Engage STC. We have an online survey there to ask residents about what they think about our beaches and how we can improve them. And as well, I'm looking for one more thing. State of the City is coming up on Thursday. It's part of the GNCC. It's a free event. Just register at the GNCC website. Starts at 7 p.m. We're going to have a lot of things to talk about. It's going to be a great way to look at last year, look where we are today, and look ahead into the future. So we're doing it in conjunction with our Team STC awards and with our economic development team. So you don't want to miss that. And finally, council, I just want to say we have in our midst someone who is an amazing woman who has done an outstanding coordinating job for many, many years here at the City of St. Catharines. And this is her final night that she'll be joining us as a council coordinator. She has been with the city for 33 years. She has provided an outstanding service, working in a number of different departments. And we have known her as our council coordinator for many, many years. Those of us who have been on council, those new to council are familiar with that smiling face, someone who works very hard to prepare for council and then make sure that at council that we're as well coordinated as possible. And also all the minutes that you see after are coordinated by Rebecca Alfieri. She is an outstanding employee for the City of St. Catharines, 33 years of being an ambassador for our city. And if you ever walk into a room and you don't have a smile on your face, have a conversation with Rebecca and you will have a smile on your face. She's just that really nice person who is going to be missed here at the City of St. Catharines. So Rebecca, all the faces on the Zoom screen are there.
Thank
And
you.
so we are going to give you a virtual
Clap.
Well,
Clap.
I didn't want to disappoint you this evening. I was really hoping for that "O Canada," but I just left you singing, so I know you're going to miss it.
I think that was a shot. I think that was a parting shot.
No, it wasn't, honestly. Thank you, everybody.
Rebecca, you're awesome. All right. So with that, I will now turn it over to the clerk. And the city clerk, Bonnie Mystico Dunk, will take us through the agenda.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this evening's adoption of the agendas, the following items of additional correspondence have been placed in Council's Sugar Sync folder. You've got a memorandum from the Director of Economic Development and Government Relations regarding federal firearms measures to combat crime and increase public safety. Niagara Region, you have a notice to consider Regional Planning and Economic Development Committee regarding the Regional Office Plan Amendment Number 17, Glendale District Plan. You have correspondence from Niagara Folk Arts Multicultural Center requests for a 2-year extension for the Folk Arts Festival fee-for-service agreement and 2020 event summary. Confidential memorandum from the Deputy Clerk regarding vacancy appointment for Downtown Development Revitalization Advisory Committee. The following amendments have been made to this evening's agenda. On the council agenda, bylaw A has been revised to read a bylaw to repeal bylaw number 2021-6 entitled a bylaw to temporarily waive certain late fees, penalties, fees, and charges of the corporation with respect to parking, enforcement, and associated fees. And you have additional reason to go in camera this evening, which is to receive an update regarding unsolicited property acquisition request. And the item will be added as item 2.2 on the in-camera agenda. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Deputy to the City Clerk. I need a motion to approve the agenda if there's no changes to the agenda. Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor Harris. Is there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. We now go to conflicts of interest. Councillor Kushner, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a conflict of interest on consent item 2.1 since I'm a director of the Lincoln County Humane Society. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. Any other conflicts? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to adoption of the minutes. We have a motion that council adopt the minutes of the meeting of council held Monday, February 22nd, and that council adopt the minutes of the general committee meeting for Monday, February 22nd as well. Councillor Townsend as deputy mayor, you move that. Seconded by Councillor Sorrento. And all in favor, unless there's some changes to the minutes. All in favor? It's carried. We will now resolve into general committee. And we have a consent agenda in front of us, and that council approve the consent agenda, save and accept those items brought forward for discussion forthwith. So is there anything to bring forward, council? If I'm seeing none, then Councillor Dodge, can I have you move the motion for the consent agenda? Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Phillips. All right, to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this evening's consent agenda, item 2.1, legal and clerk services from the director, renewal of animal control services agreement, Niagara Region Animal Services, Inc. 2.2, community recreation and culture services, business planning and strategic services, the Parks Legacy Fund update. Item 2.3, legal and clerk services, Office of the City Clerk, Council correspondence. Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Harris,
Yes.
Councillor Kushner,
Yes, with the exception of 2.1.
yes, it's noted. Thank you, Councillor Kushner. Councillor Littleton,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Porter,
Yes.
Councillor Cisco,
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento,
Yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
Okay, we move on to the general committee. We got discussion agenda 3.1, Office of the CAO. So we have CAO Chemnitz who will take us through the report. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council. We're only, as the mayor has noted, we're only days away from marking our 1-year anniversary since COVID-19 pandemic was declared and our city operations contracted to only essential services. Since that initial time, we've been locked down, we've partially reopened, we entered a second lockdown, and now we've begun the reopening process again. Although we didn't anticipate it lasting this long, it's important for us to recognize the significant efforts of council staff in our community in working through this pandemic. We particularly thank council for their support in the times when we have often, as senior staff, had to make decisions with quite a level of uncertainty and changing circumstances. And we've been able to act quickly and make decisions to protect our community. And we thank council for support during that time. As well, over the last year, we really want to thank tonight our staff that many of them have been working at their jobs of essential services the entire time, and others have dealt with changing circumstances in working from home, in City Hall, in our other facilities. So we thank our staff for doing excellent work for us over this year, and we look forward to a return to somewhat normalcy coming. You know, we've quickly had to ramp up and ramp down, but with vaccines and vaccine sites in place, we can anticipate seeing our community return to health and hope to focus on recovery. A week ago, today, March 1st, the Niagara region moved into the red control level of the response framework. The city responded by reopening many of our facilities and services using the proper safety protocols and communications to the public. And you can see in Appendix 1 some of the specific details of that. Niagara Region Public Health have confirmed that there are suspected variant cases in Niagara. I see on their website that there are a number of confirmed cases now, and it's up to us as a community to be responsible in order to continue to be vigilant and avoid a larger ramp up of cases again. As I've mentioned at prior council meetings, Niagara Region website contains a large amount of data concerning COVID cases, variants, and vaccination statistics, and I encourage everyone to visit those web pages to get the Niagara specific data. Regarding the vaccine rollout, Niagara Region Public Health and Niagara Health System are currently finishing the vaccination of the highest risk populations, as detailed in our COVID report this evening. Our Seymour Hanna site continues to operate as a vaccination site for NHS. They've reported that the site is functioning very well. And at the most recent vaccine task force meeting, we heard how positive and uplifting the space is, both for those working there and those receiving the vaccinations. As a city, we're thankful for the opportunity to participate in this important effort by the use of our facility, and we continue to work with Niagara Public Health and advocate for transitioning of this space to serve the broader community vaccination effort once NHS has completed their work there. The provincial government has announced a centralized vaccination registration portal launching on March 15th, and it will be used by our local public health agencies across the province, and mass vaccination classes or clinics will begin soon after the portal is launched. Regarding in our COVID report this evening, parking operations and enforcement at the council meeting, if you'll recall, on January 18th, council approved parking enforcement to be limited to safety related issues only and waiving the fees and charges on on-street parking and in the garages until April 30th, 2021. Now, we have always traditionally had this 3-hour limit of parking to encourage turnover parking in our core. And it's not considered a safety related issue, but exists to ensure that turnover, as I said. With parking fees waived at the municipal lots and garages, permit holders have opted now to move their vehicles to on-street metered spaces and surface parking lots for longer periods of time, taking advantage of the free parking and thus eliminating available parking for our downtown businesses, which are now on their path to reopening. City has received a number of complaints from downtown business owners that vehicles are parked in front of their business for periods of time far exceeding the 3-hour time limit. And this certainly does not support the spirit of the council's motion at the January 18th meeting. So with this report tonight, we're recommending council approve the enforcement of all the city's parking at the discretion of the CAO and deputy CAO in consultation with parking services staff, as it will provide us with greater flexibility to address concerns that may arise as we go through the opening framework. We reached out to the Downtown Association and they have given us their full support to enforce this time limit as shown in the letter, which we've included in Appendix 2. With Niagara now in the red zone, having the turnover is crucial to supporting our downtown businesses. A large portion of our report details some very good announcements that we've had over the last week. We've heard from the mayor regarding regarding financial relief from the province, and I will turn over the floor to Christine Douglas to give us some details on the financial implications today.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. As both yourself and the CAO have indicated, the city, along with the other 44 municipalities across the province of Ontario, received some great news last Thursday with regard to the 2021 COVID-19 recovery funding and the Safe Restart Phase 3 for transit stream operations. With regards to the municipal operations in 2021, the city will receive an additional $2.94 million. This allocation of funding was based on the proportion of the COVID-19 cases in the public health unit for each respective municipality for the period of January 1st, 2021 until February the 18th, 2021. The purpose of these funds are to address the city's priority COVID-19 operating costs and pressures. Finance will be preparing a report for the March 22nd Budget Standing Committee meeting as to how these additional funds can be used to mitigate the city's forecasted unfavorable position presented at the February 22nd council meeting. Any unused or excess of these funds are to be placed in a reserve for use in the future to support COVID-19 operating costs and pressures. In addition, there are 2 reports to the province required: an interim report, which is due in June of this year, and a final report, which is due in the spring of 2022. For the municipal transit operations, funding allocations to continue to be based on a formula of transit ridership plus a base amount of $40,000 applied to each total program allocation. Funding announcement last Thursday, St. Catharines Transit will be eligible for an additional $3.75 million under the Safe Restart Phase 3 funding stream. To address additional COVID-19 related financial impacts and costs incurred between April 1st, 2021 and December 31st, 2021 related to transit initiatives, which include the cost of fares and service integrations, on-demand microtransit, and transformation of transit structures and governance. Requirement for these funds is any interest earned is to be used towards eligible expenses, and that there is a return portion of any Phase 3 funding that is unspent at the end of the reporting period. There is also reporting requirements due to the Ministry of Transportation, with the first due on October the 26th, 2021, and the second is due before January 31st of 2022. Mr. Mayor, this concludes the update on the financial funding that was received by the city last week.
Thank you very much, Director Douglas and CAO Cabinets. Thank you very much. And I've got a question from Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ms. Douglas, regarding the parking enforcement, the motion was originally to keep going until April 30th. So now we're saying we could change that effective now, essentially. Does that impact revenue positively to hopefully pay for that $3,200 extra you have to pay to bring staff on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with regards to the return of us looking at enforcing parking violations, there will be some additional revenues, but we aren't going to be charging for on-street parking or charging for parking in our garages, as council had approved that not to occur until after the end of April. So there will be some additional violation tickets and amounts received. It will partially offset the cost, but we will need to bring on the additional officers to ensure that there is enforcement. So we'll continue to update council, but at this time, I don't anticipate it'll be fully offset.
Thank you, Director. And one more question through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, you mentioned the early on the locations that Niagara region has identified for vaccination sites in each municipality, and concerns we have heard about the location at Brock and access to it and so on. Will we not be able to keep Seymour Hannah open for that, or is the region not agreeing to that?
I'll turn it over to CAO Chemnitz. I could start by just stating that Niagara Health is right now under contract with the City of St. Catharines, and that is separate from public health. And so there's some discussion, because there is a potential overlap if the vaccines do arrive relatively quickly. There could be an overlap between Niagara Health and public health. And so I think that was a deciding factor. I'll look to the CAO. I think that was a deciding factor in trying to keep those two spaces separate. Not that I agree with it, but that's what we've been told. I'll go to the CAO.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that characterization is correct. Certainly, we are not sitting here accepting that, you know, if the facility is there, we wish it to be used to its fullest capacity. So while Niagara Health is in there currently vaccinating, at some point in time, they will be completed of the, you know, the groups, the priority groups that have been their responsibility, and they will start to wind down. However, that facility, as far as St. Catharines, is available for as long as it's needed for a vaccination site. And we personally feel that we want to do everything to make sure that vaccinations are as easily accessible as possible to the public. So we, from a staff level, are doing everything we can to work with those two partners to say, you know, transition, there should be, it should go as seamlessly as possible, and the site during any sort of transition should be fully utilized at all times. The goal is that there is as much opportunity for the vaccines to be distributed as possible. We do also have to, you know, understand that we will also be using, not we, but Niagara Public Health will be also, vaccinations will come out through pharmacies and through primary medical providers. So there will be lots of opportunity, but we want to make sure that we're contributing where we possibly can. And we feel Seymour Hannah is a very good site to do that. It's working wonderfully now, and we're hearing very good things from there. So we will continue to advocate for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And any other further questions of the CAO? Okay, can we have the council coordinator, Ms. Alfieri, if you want to pull the motion on, and I'll look to the city clerk. It's not a reconsideration because we're still maintaining parts of the motion. It's just a change in some of the language. Is that correct?
It's also new information that's being brought forward, so it's new. I would consider this not a reconsideration.
Okay, just want to be clear. Okay, so mover and a seconder. I got Councillor Cisco and Councillor Deputy Mayor Townsend. Okay. Call the question and go to the city clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Mayor Senzik,
Yes.
and that's carried unanimously.
Okay, we move to 3.2, Legal Clerk Services, Office of the City Clerk. We have an update regarding the Equity and Inclusion and the LGBTQ2+ and Anti-Racism Advisory Committees, as well as a recommendation. I know Councillor Miller is moving this, seconded by Councillor Porter. And we have the information in front of us to the City Clerk. Do you want to touch on, as the author of this, is there anything you want to highlight, or want to just turn it over to questions?
As council read in the report, it's really just I'm bringing back a report that I promised with respect to how the committee was working with the 3 committee structure. And so I listed in the report that we reached out to the committees that seemed satisfied to continue in this same structure. So I was not going to recommend that we change the structure of the committees to a 1 committee structure. Obviously, in working with the committees, we realized the amount of time that was actually involved in trying to manage these committees from the corner of our desks. And so that became obviously not a problem, but just it was a lot of work, and we recognized that. So that's why staff met and discussed this, moving this position along. That's been discussed, I believe, last year as well. And so that's what's before you this evening. So there is just to continue on with the 3 committee system until the new council comes on board and another report comes forward, and to hire a permanent full-time equity and inclusion individual. And that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. Councillor Cisco, you had your hand up first, then Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm hoping to make what I believe would be a friendly amendment, just asking that after the 4th clause with respect to the funding for the position, that direction be given to staff to include this as a part of the standard operating budget for 2022, so that we don't have to have a discussion about where funding will come from in the future, just that it be added into the levy. I don't love the idea of cobbling it together, but this is a unique year, and I know this has been waiting, and if it's a necessity at this point. Obviously, DEI is something that every board is trying to deal with in terms of hiring and everything else, and the way they run their operations. So it's a necessity. So I'm hoping, like I said, a friendly amendment that we can just have this as a part of the regular budget consultations as a position that's funded through the levy.
Okay, and I got thumbs up from Councillor Miller and a Councillor Porter. You're okay with the amendment? Thumbs up too. Good. Okay, thank you, Councillor Cisco. Councillor Townsend, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'm wondering if just for the people watching at home of the public, if maybe we can have just a staff member explain what the role would be, what would it entail, just so those watching would have a better understanding of why we need this in our city and within the organization.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, I can address that through you, Mr. Mayor. This role we're seeking is to help us assess and provide feedback through how we operate as a corporation. So we would do an assessment. So we would be looking at policies, reviewing them, developing them. We'd be delivering training. We'd provide awareness. We'd also look to this role as addressing complaints under respect in the workplace policy. Labor relations, if we have any initiatives that we are bringing forward, we look to this role to help with the methodologies that we utilize, any integrations that we see that need to happen. We do see this as building that relationship with regards to our employees. Obviously, I think you've seen in the report that we see it assisting our council equity seeking committees. We also see that it's a very specialized expertise that's in this role, and that will be one of the things that when we do go through our recruitment, we will be looking for that. But it is very important that we recognize this role and what it could do for us as a corporation and into our community. So I leave it at that unless there's any more particular questions.
Okay, thank you, Director Pelletier. Councillor Townsend, you're good.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'll just say, Mr. Mayor, I am in full support of this this motion and this position. If you look right now, even on LinkedIn and on Google Jobs, there are over 100 active postings for positions like this from major companies, corporations, and it doesn't just start at corporations. There are educational institutions hiring for this position, other municipalities across Ontario hiring for this position. I look forward to supporting it, and I really do hope that the rest of council will support this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend, and go over to Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also have an amendment that I hope will be considered friendly, but I need the city clerk's advice as to whether I should table that amendment now or later.
Okay, so to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe Councillor Garcia's motion, it's actually a motion. It's not really an amendment because it would be different, or would be, I would suggest we would work with this recommendation first, and then yours would follow nicely, Councillor Garcia. If you wanted to add it, you could bring it to the floor right after this. I would propose you do it that way.
Okay, Councillor Phillips, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Earlier when we discussed this position, I'll be honest, I was unsure of the need for this position, but as chair of the Social Sustainability Committee and seeing the amount of work that our staff who is assigned to these committees do to prepare reports for us and to help guide the committees through their meetings and the policies, I certainly see a need for this position to be hired. And as Councillor Townsend said, many other communities are in the process of hiring a similar position. So yeah, I definitely support this. And as well, in reading the report, I see that this position would also have some responsibility in working with our accessibility committee. That's correct, I believe. And it wasn't that long ago that we had a full-time position dealing strictly with our accessibility committee, and that person is definitely missed. So whoever gets this position is definitely going to have a busy job to do, and I definitely support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Miller, mover of the motion.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to be moving it. I know I've sort of banged this drum here a few times at council, and I'm glad we're getting to it tonight. I think the pandemic has exposed a lot of the inequity that we see in our society, and some in our corporation, I'm sure too. So it's a timely hiring, I think, and hopefully we do support this. And I think it's fitting on International Women's Day to be looking at this as well. We know we've heard in the last few weeks about harassment towards counselors. We know we saw with one of our committees, we saw some harassment, and some of that is based on inequity. And hopefully this position can help us as we seek to move forward to answer some of those questions, because I think as we've seen all the social media posts and things today that highlight some of the things that women go through when they're elected to council, that happens to our staff as well. We want to be making sure that we're doing all we can to increase our diversity and protect and support those who we've already hired. So thank you very much to staff for being on this long journey here. And hopefully this support tonight, I think we're going to see it be a really transformational position for the city of St. Catharines.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Thank you for your tenacity on this. Councillor Porter and Councillor Littleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is International Women's Day, and it's honestly a relief to feel that there is support amongst councillors for this position. I don't feel that I'm in the position to have to fight for this at this moment, and that's a great relief to me. The three committees have been doing outstanding work, and I think it's our job to make sure that we're able to sustain that work. And it's important work in the community. Only 18% of mayor's positions in Canada are filled by women, for example, and 28% of councillor seats are filled by women, for example. And then when you add in people of color, people with disabilities, our councils in Canada aren't really representing our community, and it's our job to make sure that we're removing obstacles that exclude people from participating in local government. So this is really about building a better city. Staff have a lot of constraints on their time. There's competing demands, and we can't expect that our existing staff are experts in this. We're all learning, and I think it's very important that we seek expertise. It's not only supporting the work of the community committees that we formed, it's also about looking inside internally at our corporation and at our staff. There's no Employment Equity Act. There's a federal law, but it only applies to federally regulated workplaces. So there's nothing in place for municipalities. So nobody's really collecting statistics about the makeup of the workforce of municipalities. We used to have an Employment Equity Act in Ontario in 1993, but it got repealed in 1995. So as Councillor Miller pointed out, the pandemic is making economic recovery for people like women a lot more difficult. And I think the need for a position like this at our city is really crucial. And I think we'd be taking a leadership role as well as we're going through this recovery. So I hope that council supports it. I could go on and on, but I'll stop.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Well said. And thank you for seconding this. Councillor Littleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just thank you, Councillor Porter, for your comments. They're wonderful. And I guess I just wanted to add on that I think unless we actively look for equity, at least nothing will ever change. And I know sometimes people think, well, the best candidate will apply, or, we talk ourselves into this narrative, but it's not true. And if we don't open our doors to looking for everybody, to being inclusive and actively do that, then we won't be. And I feel like on International Women's Day, it's been a tough day, I'll say. And, I was on an interview on Friday, I'll just share this, and the woman was in Asia, and it's about the work that we did with the Seat at the Table program. And this woman is a researcher, and she's researching various positions, talking to various women in the Commonwealth. So the day before, she had spoken to someone in Spain, and she spoke to someone in India. And inequity, especially for women, is around the world, even in Canada. As privileged as we are here, it's staggering. It's staggering that I'm 46, and it's just all around. And so if there's something that our council, and I can only talk as a woman, those are my only experiences that I can talk about. But if we can take the initiative and make it a priority that we are going to look for and hire and people in our community that are in our community into our corporation, we're going to be the better for it. We're going to be the richer for it. We need other people's perspectives. We need people of color, members of the LGBTQ plus community. We need, I don't want to go on and on, but we need everybody, folks with disabilities, so that we can build the best city that we have. And so I'm just really supportive of this, and thank everybody for their work on this. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Littleton. All right. So any councillors Councillor, you have a point of clarification? You've already spoken. Councillor Garcia?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, clarification, I do support obviously hiring this position. But just to the clerk again, I'm just concerned about what you said earlier about the fact that my amendment is really a motion. I just want to make sure, absolutely sure, that I can table that right after this. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Your motion, if I can recall it right at this moment, I don't have it up on the screen. Your motion basically is, if this passes, your motion is asking for a different direction once this passes for the funding part of it. So I think it's actually a new motion. If I added that as an amendment to this motion, it doesn't make sense. So,
okay.
But you can definitely put it on the screen. I think Mr. Mayor knows. So,
Okay.
As the chair of the meeting, what I'll say is we'll vote on this and then we'll take a look at what Councillor Garcia has sent. So seeing no other further questions, we're going to vote just on the motion that's on the screen. If council coordinator, yep, that's great. We got the motion on the screen and I'll turn it over to the clerk to call the question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Porter.
Sorry, yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes, although I'm concerned about the funding, but I'll address that later. Thank you.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So yes.
Carried unanimously.
And so I just want to thank Councillor Miller, Councillor Porter. They've been really moving this along. I also want to thank the committees that were formed under this term of council, the Equity and Inclusion, LGBTQ2+, the anti-racism committees. They've been talking about this and really pushing staff to find ways that it can come in front of us again as a council. And I also want to thank the council coordinators that are involved in those committees. They are doing a lot of great work, and I encourage all of council to look at the work plans of those committees. This position that we've just approved will breathe life into the work plans. And what I mean by that is they have great ideas coming up from the committees, but how to bring them into the city structure is probably the most difficult thing that one person can do if you're a volunteer. But when you're actually an employee of the city, you have now a resource around you that will take these work plans and really bring them to life, get them in front of council, but also get them into the corporate structure as well. So a very strong move by the city of St. Catharines. Well done to council and to all the staff that were involved in making this happen. Okay, so Councillor Garcia, you have some direction here. And Councillor Garcia, so you're walking something on, and what I'm going to say is I'll ask you to explain it, but this is a bit of an anomaly because it is a different motion. It is a walk-on motion. So if it goes down a road too far, I'm just going to ask to have it lifted and pushed to the end of the meeting. So if you can briefly explain what you're attempting to do here.
I will read it and then I'll explain, Mr. Mayor. And I must say, I'm not in agreement that it's a separate motion, but
okay.
Anyway.
So Councillor.
Yes.
The city clerk has made a decision.
I know.
So she's the one who runs the meeting.
I accept it.
Okay, thank you. Now you can go forward.
Okay, so if the funds, and we pass that council and the organizational effectiveness task force, pardon me, approved for the organizational effectiveness study, my apologies, are reallocated as in the motion, that our new CAO be asked to provide within his or her first 6 months a detailed organizational review and plan for council's approval before implementing any changes to senior management position. And I will just make a quick background on that. I oppose reallocating those funds at the budget committee, but I know that that was passed. So I just want to make sure we are going to be hiring a new CAO. It's public information. And when that new CAO comes on board, I think this organizational effectiveness study would have been really helpful to him or her. So barring that, I'm asking that at least the new individual appointed be able to provide to council his or her review and plan for our approval in terms of how he sees the senior organization.
Okay, so I appreciate what you've put here. I'm going to ask for a deferral to a meeting in which we're actually going to discuss the moving forward operations of the corporation when the new CAO is hired. So what I would ask of council is if we could move that, council, you can bring this, it's not going to change between now and then anyway. So if I can ask a motion to defer, Councillor Williamson, you got your hand up?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a question. We heard an announcement of new monies this week from the province. Could that money, through you two, staff member, be used to replace the money that was taken out or reallocated from the organizational effectiveness task force?
I'll go to Director Douglas.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The funds are for COVID operating pressures and costs. So as I indicated in the council report and in my comments this evening, the finance staff will be looking to bring information to the March 22nd Budget Standing Committee with regards to how these additional funds can be used. We are forecasting a deficit at the end of the Q1. And, there is a lot of uncertainty with regards to, when things are going to be reopening. We have the vaccination clinic operating in Hannah. It is very much needed there. But there is a cost to the city for doing that. So I would say at this point in time, perhaps it might be, we could potentially discuss it when the information comes to budget committee, but the funds do need to be COVID related costs.
Thank you, Director Douglas. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to highlight the fact that in 2019, the City of St. Catharines put out a request for proposal to the province's Audit and Accountability Fund that they put out. And so we received $200,000 and we hired Ernst & Young at a cost of $200,000 to do an operational review. And they looked at planning and building services, engineering, community and cultural services, municipal works, finance and corporate support services. And they looked through everything and they found several operational opportunities to improve organizational effectiveness. And I know that senior staff were looking for some commitments from council in order to implement some of these recommendations from Ernst & Young. So I guess my question is, this happened a few months right before the pandemic. Ernst & Young came, and I think December of 2019, I think that's when that report happened. And then the pandemic came about 3 months later in early 2020. So my question is to the CAO or to senior staff, do you still require, have you been able to look at this report again? Are there still things outstanding? And I still, my question has always been, if we've spent $200,000 for an external audit from Ernst & Young that looked at our entire corporation, and they looked at organizational effectiveness, do we still need another $30,000 study to look at literally 2 levels inside our organization when we've looked at everything less than a year ago, or about a year ago?
CAO Kenneth.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly we did receive that report. You're correct that we received that report and started working on that report, the recommendations within that report beginning in early 2020. COVID did interject. And so while we continue to have those things top of mind, we are now begin to resurrect ourselves to the next stage of those things. There is additional money that the city now has to continue to pursue the recommendations from that report, and we are working through that as well. Certainly evaluating an organization from my point of view is an ongoing thing. There is no organization is ever perfectly in alignment and set to go for every eventuality. COVID has shown us many challenges that we faced in many places where we can improve and work on things. So there's always opportunity to review, but that has always been to me internally within the corporation as senior leadership and as CAO and deputy CAO. That's something that is on our radar at all times so that the corporation maintains its ability to address the situations that occur.
Thank you. You've been the CAO for several years now. Do you think that spending an additional $30,000 or trying to find money to do another review would be a duplication of what we've already done.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly, as I said, that we, the senior leadership, myself and Deputy CA Oakes, are continuing in the process of reviewing. So we are always doing those things. We see that very much as our responsibility to do that. So that, you know, I think, you know, that's my opinion is it's our responsibility to look at and say, okay, here is an area of the corporation that needs some review. There are certain areas of the corporation we're in the midst of reviewing now internally to determine what is the best placement for them forward. Because again, COVID has shown us, brought a number of things to light, and we feel those are things that need to be addressed. And we have various teams within the corporation doing that presently.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Porter, and thank you, CAO Chemnitz. Councillor Townsend, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And hearing what we just heard, I would like to make a motion to defer this until a later date. It just sounds like there's a lot. I can't speak to a deferral, but it just sounds like there's a lot of the same things going on here. So, motion to defer this.
Okay, motion to defer. All right.
Can I just ask clarify something? How's that?
What are you clarifying, Councillor?
I don't think there's any money involved in this motion. And I understand the idea, and I think this would probably be a conversation with whoever we hire to come back with in 6 months.
That's why it's being deferred. So,
but where is it being deferred to, and how is it being deferred?
Well, it's going to be deferred until we do have a meeting of council coming up related to the CAO, and it'll be at that meeting that we have a discussion.
Okay, can I ask that we put in that date then?
We don't have the date yet. It'll be coming up.
Yeah, so just sorry to interrupt, Mr. Mayor. It would be to defer until at least a new CAO is hired or at a later date.
Okay. Okay, that's good. It'll be dealt with in due time. Motion to defer, to show of hands. Okay, opposed. All right, that's carried. Thank you. Okay, so let's keep that one on the the burner, Councillor Garcia. We will get to that at some point. We now move on into motions to ratify forthwith.
You've got mail. Sorry.
Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, could I just, if I could ask the clerk something again, something related, but for some clarification. I'm not sure whether this requires a report from the city clerk or whether she can comment on it now, but I realize when I think about this that council approved that organizational effectiveness study, and then the setup of a task force, which was set up by council, approved by council. That task force, which was composed strictly of councilors, approved proceeding with this and went through an RFP process. So now that we're saying that we're reallocating this, this task force hasn't even been consulted about this reallocation, nor have we met to discuss that. Does that task force have to perhaps do a reconsideration of their motion, or because it seems to me that we are totally undermining a task force of council by saying we gave him this authority and now we just reallocate funds without even discussing it with them.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. I was confused as well with the direction this all went, and I followed it closely to ensure that it wasn't a reconsideration motion at all. So you can, rest assured I had followed the process, which I think there was the attachments in the report that I followed through on. It's council as a whole that would have to, that makes a decision on that financial piece. And I know what you're saying. I think you're asking me, and I can give it to you in writing if you like. I have it written down. So I'd be happy to forward that to you, but it's not a reconsideration, and council never did deal with that 30,000. At the operating budget level. So they're dealing with it now in this motion. They've dealt with it as a body of council, but I'm happy to discuss that with you further.
Okay.
or
Sorry,
send it to you in writing.
So
you're
Counselor,
gonna hear that it's not quite my
Counselor,
question.
Counselor, what I'm gonna say is we've dealt with the issue. Can we wait until the end of the meeting, then we'll figure out how to, because you're not gonna do anything about the meeting right now. Let's wait until the end of the meeting and see if we can find a roadmap to get the answer that you're looking for, okay? I don't want to have a discussion in the middle of a meeting on something that isn't germane to what we need to deal with tonight. But I think what you're talking about, we're gonna have to get some clarification on, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion to ratify recommendations forthwith, that council adopt the items approved by general committee on Monday, March 8th, 2021. Moving the motion, I have Councillor Littleton is up for this one, and seconded by Councillor Miller, hopefully. Okay, and all in favor of the forthwith recommendation that we just approved? That is carried. Okay, we do have a motion here. Councillor Garcia, you are up again, I believe. And this is with 10.1, use of the capital improvement fund for the First Ontario Performing Arts Center. So to this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we can put that on the screen, please. So I'll just read that, Mr. Mayor. At his meeting on February 23rd, 2021, the First Ontario PAC Board discussed the need to undertake certain capital improvements, the merits of undertaking these projects while use of the facility is impacted by COVID-19, and approved a motion to request to fund these projects from the PAC's Capital Reserve Fund. Therefore, be it resolved that Council approve the use of approximately $154,000 in 2021 from the Capital Improvement Fund for the First Ontario PAC Center Reserve to carry out projects related to the venue floors, that's the venue floors for Partridge Hall, for Robertson Theatre, for the RBC and multi-purpose room, and also for the doors to the Robertson Theatre level washroom stalls. Councillor Townsend was with me at this meeting and he seconded my motion, but I just wanted to comment on that very briefly, that the administration manager of the Performing Arts Center feels it's very important to, timing wise, that this be done now because essentially the halls are not in use and therefore there would be no revenue lost from tying up for that work. And so what we're asking as the PAC board is that $154,000 from that capital improvement fund, which currently has $367,000 on it in it approximately, be released because council's approval is required. And that capital improvement fund is funded out of a ticket surcharge, just to clarify for my council colleagues that may not be familiar with that. And therefore, those funds will be replenished as we get back to work and start holding events again, which hopefully will be very soon. So I'm hoping everyone will support this. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Garcia. Councillor Townsend is the seconder.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just be quick and just Councillor Garcia summed it up quickly. This has been an issue that dates back to when I was first elected and put onto the board back to 2019. So as our new executive director and the board has highlighted, this would be an opportunity for us to look after these issues, the other venue floors, and obviously the washroom stall. So I'm hoping council will support this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Townsend. I got Councillor, so let me get to the Councillor Townsend, Councillor Harris, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Finance. I'm just wondering, since this was from a surcharge from tickets and how it's been impacted from COVID, with some of the money that we've been, COVID-related money, can some of those funds be applied to these jobs, this construction job?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the ticket surcharge is actually received based on the performances and the tickets that were sold. So therefore, what is being recommended here is that we're taking the funds from the reserve to do some work within the facility. The work that needs to be completed within the facility is not directly COVID related. It is works that we're taking advantage of this time when the theater and the center is dark in order to do this work. So at this point in time, I'm not sure that we could say that these are COVID related costs. I think your other question is because of the loss that the Performing Arts Center received or didn't didn't generate because of COVID, that potentially to put into the reserve. So based on the operational results for the Performing Arts Center for the year, they were able to mitigate, and they did not end their year in a deficit position. And that is what we had forecasted when we made our applications to the province, that they would be at least in a break-even position. So I would say at this point in time, I would find it difficult to be able to allocate any of the funds that the city received in 2020 towards the PAC Reserve Fund.
Okay. Councillor
Perfect,
Harris?
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harris. You got Councillor Littleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to, I'm not sure who. Why is this before us now? If it's, I guess, two questions. So the first one is why is it before us if it's their own fund? First question.
Okay, so I believe because it's a capital investment and we own the building, they have to come in front of us to ask for or to provide direction that they're about to undertake this. And then the second question.
So why wasn't this in the budget that was presented then, or was it?
Okay, good question. So I'll go to Director Douglas, and if she wants to, we also have the Executive Director from the PAC, Colleen Smith, is here. Director Douglas, go with you first.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there were a number of items that the PAC put forward for inclusion within the 2021 capital budget. So as council is aware, the city has a number of priorities. And when we work with our ABCs, as well as all of the needs across the corporation, we need to do various prioritizations. So there were not all of the projects that the PAC put forward in 2020 were we able to fund. And at that time, we weren't looking to use this reserve fund. But as you know, the pandemic has continued to evolve and review of the PAC operations, this option to fund these improvements in this manner and using the reserve was something that we thought would be beneficial, or that Colleen and the PAC team thought would be beneficial, as well as in consultation with the city staff to do it at this time because of where we are with regards to the pandemic. I also think that there is, as the PAC, this is, you know, 2020 was the first year that PAC was on its own as a separate a board that we're constantly looking at ways to improve the relationship between the city, and now that the PAC operates as a separate board, and you know, we're more fully aware of the various needs that the PAC will have going forward.
So in terms of the priorities, this was further down on the list of priorities at budget time?
Director Douglas.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, these were some of the items that we weren't able to accommodate within the available funding envelope that we had at that time. There also may be some lack of understanding of the need of these items be done at that time.
So if I can add, just in terms of, and I think if I can ask Executive Director Colleen Smith to come on, there was, because we didn't know, because no one knew what 2021 would bring, And the fact that we have slid back into what has been an extended lockdown, that could have allowed staff to really look at, okay, if we're not going to have people in there for the next 3 or 4 months, what can we do now so that when we do ramp up, there's going to be, we don't need to actually close any facility again for the foreseeable future because the floors will have been done. But I'll look to Executive Director Smith just to provide some reasoning why they are where they are.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, through you. Thank you everyone for giving us some consideration to this request tonight that's been put forward through Councillor Garcia. The original request for work for capital purposes for the PAC went through last March 2020. I began my work with the PAC in May of 2020. And the various committees of the board were put into high gear, if you will, at that moment forward. Our plan for the current year has had to be adjusted based on the realities of COVID and gathering restrictions. And so what we're looking to do is make really good decisions on how can we best maintain our asset, how can we best maintain the city's asset by going forward with work that is required for the building in due time, so that we are not taking away from the opportunity for the building to be used as it has been designed for the community and for events. So this is a special request that we investigated last fall. We looked at our asset planning tool, which looks at a 5-year overview of all of the necessary work to the Performing Arts Center. And we saw work that we believed could be done realistically within the current fiscal, within a reasonable amount of expenditures, and wanted to put that in front of you so that we can get in there and get the work done as soon as possible so that the building is ready to go whenever we are robustly back into our operations once more.
Okay, so I guess I'm just stuck on that the request for the budget, I think was an increase of 7% or so, if I'm recalling correctly from budget time. And in December, when we passed the budget, all indications were we were headed for a lockdown. So I'm just looking at the timing. I understand that you have to pivot and you want to get work done. The library is doing the same thing while patrons are not in the building. But I'm just, large increase in the budget, asked for, got it. And now here we are asking for another 154,000. That's where I'm stuck on this.
So I'm going to ask Director Douglas and then maybe the CAO to come on, because again, these are out of a fund, so it doesn't hit the levy and it doesn't hit the our tax levy here. So technically, coming in front of council using funds that come out of reserve are different than coming out of the tax levy itself. So I'm going to go to CAO cabinets just to provide some clarity around that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, that is correct. These funds would be used from the PAC's reserves. Normally, in a budget year, when their operating budget request would come, their request to use reserves would come at the same time. So if transit or library is utilizing reserves, part of their operating budget submission also indicates what capital works they might do. And so if we think back to last fall, when we were discussing the capital budget, all eyes were turned to reopening and continuing to reopen. So I think from the minds of the PAC board and staff, it was to get to operations as quickly as possible to open the center and be part of recovery. And so their minds were focused there. Now that didn't materialize, this opened the opportunity. So they've asked to come back to say, certainly can we use our reserves to do some work before we fully open. We would anticipate that every operating budget submission, when they come, they would also deal with the capital reserve requests. But this is a bit of an unusual situation in that the line of sight as to where they were planning, what they were planning to do has very radically changed over the course of the last month. And our capital budget and those types of things were discussed in the mid-fall time, I think.
Okay. Councillor Lilton.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions. I got Councillor Kushner, then Councillor Sorrento, then Councillor Phillips. So if we can get through this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two questions. How much is in the capital improvement fund?
Okay, Director Douglas, do you have that one quick? Or we do have.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, it's $367,000 is in that reserve at this point.
Okay, and the second question is, when were these capital expenditures originally scheduled to be done?
I can field that that question. Thank you through the chair. We also have Carlos Robayo, who is the head of both finance and administration for the Performing Arts Center. So if there's something that goes beyond my institutional memory of last May, I would ask him to step in. These were as a part of a proper asset planning tool and plan. There is work that needs to be done on a regular basis. So the work that is in front of you right now that we are asking to be able to access from the fund for which we've contributed is work that needs to be done now. There is a challenge with doors that needs to be fixed in order to be ready for the public. There's also a challenge with flooring that needs to be addressed as well. And these are items that would naturally come up within a 5 to 6 year period of time of any performing arts facility. And we are at the 6 year moment right now.
So getting back to the question, when were they scheduled to be done?
Okay, so
5 years, pardon?
I'll look to Mr. Robayo.
Thank you.
If you've got some additional information.
Chair, the repairs were wanted to be done in 2021.
Okay.
2021.
Correct.
Thank you. And then my comment, Mr. Mayor, given that they're scheduled for 21, it's in the near future, and I think it's a very good principle to do the work while the facility is empty. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner, Councillor Sorrento, and then Councillor Phillips, and that should be it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to echo what Councillor Kushner just said. I'm just wondering if Councillor Garcia would accept this friendly amendment rather than the dollars coming out of a reserve fund. Maybe we can take it out of the Civic Project Fund because we.
Councillor, I'm going to stop you there.
Yeah.
Now, this is a separate board, so this isn't. They're not part of the sort of city corporate that the Civic Project Fund is a part of. So this is their own fund that's part of the Capital Improvement Fund.
Sure.
So that'd be a misallocation of funds.
Okay, that's fine. I completely support this, Mr. Mayor. I defer to that board and the experts there. They know what they need. They said they need this in 2021. I'm absolutely going to support it. And just to reiterate what Councillor Kushner said, you know, in private sector right now, Mr. Mayor, they're renovating kitchens and their facilities, and I think it's a wise move, and I think we should do the same. So I'm definitely going to be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Phillips. You're up. Thank you, Councillor Sorrento.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Way back when the Performing Arts Center opened, we made it mandatory that $1 per ticket went into a capital reserve fund to pay for equipment needs and any renovations that were needed. Here we are, we need it right now. There's 300 and change in the reserve. The reserve is there exactly for this need. I'm not sure why we're just spending such time discussing it. Let's get it done. And I'd like to call the question.
All right, question is called. Let's go. To the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Senzik.
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
Okay, we do have Councillor Littleton has a notice of motion. So if you just want to explain what you're going to be bringing forward and what's going to happen at the next meeting, Councillor Littleton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's going to be a request for a 2-year extension of the fee-for-service agreement with the Niagara Folk Arts Multicultural Center, but the executive director will be attending so she can do a presentation and answer any questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Littleton.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
sorry, I just realized I sit on that board, so I have a conflict when it comes to this. I just realized now.
Okay, we're not voting on it right now, so thank you for that. But Councillor Dodge, you're up for a transit. You want to talk about transit?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd love to talk about transit, especially when it's a good news item. I think we had a transit meeting today, and in light of the fact that the vaccines are going to be rolling out hopefully very soon for our city, transit will be offering free rides for anyone wishing to use the service to go to get their vaccine wherever they may be, whether it be at Brock, at their doctor's office, or if there's other locations. So it will be free. And we're hoping to work with the regional health and whomever, as well as ourselves, to be able to tell people what buses run to Brock or wherever it is that they can be riding for free. So I just wanted to let you know that.
That is awesome. And I hope there's going to be a release that comes out of there so we can let the public know. That is a great decision. Thank you, Councillor Dodge and Councillor Miller, for that. Great decision by St. Catharines Transit. All right, and I've got Councillor Miller. Speaking of Miller, Councillor Miller, you have someone that you want to thank, someone that we weren't able to say goodbye to, and but you want to acknowledge as well because special friend there.
Yeah, I just want, we haven't said anything publicly. We got Director Kate left us a nice message, but I did want to thank Judy Piak, who recently retired after 23 years at the city. She was the manager of planning services. She was a great resource for all of us on council. You know, she's involved in the official plan, zoning bylaws, lots of other things that have moved the city forward. She retired in February. She grew up across the street from her, so she's always been a great resource and mentor for me personally, and wish her very well in her retirement.
Thank you. Wonderful words. And she was a great part of the team in planning. Another strong woman working at the city of St. Catharines. And so just again, a great example to see that. So with that, I'm going to now, is there any other notices of motion that council may have? Okay, seeing none, I don't see any report requests that have been sent in. So we're getting through our report list pretty well, which is fantastic. ABCs, we do have a motion that council receive and file the minutes of the advisory committees of council, and a motion to receive and file the minutes. Councillor Porter, can you move that? And seconded by Councillor Littleton.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any comments on the minutes of the ABCs? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Excuse me. Okay. Now we got the in-camera to go into, and then we'll come out of in-camera. Now, Councillor Garcia, I'm just going to briefly give you the floor right now, just to provide some direction on what you want us to do with the issue that you had brought up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think I explained myself to the clerk very well. I didn't mean was the motion that we passed the reconsideration, although council did approve that 30,000 for the study at one time. My question is, and maybe we need a report, is what is the proper process or procedure for us in council to override a motion and decision of a council task force without even discussing it with the task force? Should we not require a meeting of that task force to review that, or to maybe they have to reconsider what they passed? But it seems to me that there is a disconnect there.
Okay, so we got some clear reasoning for what you're concerned about. So Councillor Garcia, I'm going to ask you to work with the city clerk, and we'll see what comes back for the next meeting of council if it does need to come back. But I think this will be a helpful discussion to have offline. And I can join in on that to the city clerk if required. I may not need to. If yourself and the CAO can handle it, that'd be great. Okay.
Happy to.
All right. To the clerk, we're going in camera, and we will now resolve in general committee. We're going into the camera for two reasons. One reason is we have an annual litigation report that comes to us every year, which is very informative. And then there is just a verbal update that's being requested as well on a property matter. So we've got the litigation report 2020. We've got a planning and building services unsolicited property acquisition request. So this is just a verbal update. And I'm going to ask the clerk to read the disclaimer because we just need to be mindful of our code of conduct and going into camera. So to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. By attending the in-camera session, each member of council acknowledges that their obligations under the Code of Conduct, including responsibilities related to the confidentiality of closed session materials and discussions, remain the same as if they were physically present at the meeting. This includes that members of council are not permitted to record the proceedings and that they must ensure that no other person can see or hear any of the council deliberations taking place this evening. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, motion to go in camera. Councillor Porter and Councillor Kushner, thank you. All in favor? All right. So to the council coordinator, take us to the breakout room. Let's all go to the breakout room. Let's all go to the breakout room. Come on, Deputy Mayor, you got to join me. Let's sing. All right.
Mr. Mayor, Mike.
Enough singing tonight, thanks.
For the record, Twitter has asked me to make a motion that bans your ability to sing during these meetings.
I second that motion.
Yeah, you and just about every other resident of the city of St. Catharines on Twitter.
Okay, I'll look to the clerk to make sure that we're all back in.
We are, thank you.
All right. We got now motions arising from in camera. So we had 15.1, which was a legal services annual litigation report, and a motion to receive this by LCS 2020-2021, and a motion, if I can have Councillor Williamson and Councillor Harris. And as this is just a report and there's no action on this one, let's take a show of hands. All in favor? That's carried. And then the next one was a verbal update that we had, and that was pertaining to a unsolicited property acquisition request. And so that we received the verbal report by staff, and I've got Councillor Garcia and Councillor Phillips. Councillor Garcia and Councillor Phillips, all in favor. It's a verbal report, so there's no action required. Okay. And now we head into bylaws. Reading of bylaws, we have a motion that council approve the bylaws listed on the agenda A through D be read first time, considered and passed, and that they be signed and executed by the mayor and city clerk. Who wants to make this one? I'm going to go with Councillor Harris and Councillor Sorrento.
So moved.
All in favor? That's carried. All right, do we have any further comments? We don't meet again for the next 3 weeks. Take care of yourselves, folks. Looking forward to the time we get together. And a motion to adjourn. I'm going to go with Councillor Williamson because he's in the gamer chair. I think Councillor Williamson wants to get back to Fortnite. So I'm going to leave that there. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor Townsend. All in favor? Carried. Have a great night, folks. It's been great. Good meeting.
Night, everyone. Ciao.
Ciao.